Yo. Aubrey Edwards, Tony Schiavone. We bout to party. We bout to party. Unrestricted. Got the house now. We gon' turn it up.
Welcome to All Elite Wrestling Unrestricted, the official AEW podcast. I'm Will Washington, alongside my co-host,
Aubrey Edwards. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Will, how are you?
I am great, but not as great as our guest today. We've got
Look at that segue.
The one-time, self-proclaimed Mr. Ring of Honor, Roderick Strong.
Oh, not self-proclaimed. I was given that name, actually.
Oh,
who gave
By
it to
the
you?
the bosses of Ring of Honor.
Whoa.
Yeah, they told me to start calling myself that, and I was like, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yeah." So, yeah, I would never call myself something I am not. So,
well, I think it's a very fitting title. You're
It is.
one-time Ring of Honor World Champion. You're Ring of Honor, one-time Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion, two-time World Television Champion, and second ever ROH Triple Crown Champion.
that's right. It's amazing. And at one point, I did have the most matches in company history. But
Whoa.
yeah, there was a time that I left, and the Briscoe brothers eclipsed me. So, but it's okay. It's them.
Yeah, I was going to
okay
say, if there's anybody I think I'd be okay with having the title of most Ring of Honor matches, it's probably the Briscoe brothers.
Greatest tag team ever.
I think overall, I think everyone's okay with that, actually. But hey, we're here. We're talking to Roddy, who has had a very storied career, and we're going to get into a lot of this, but obviously very, very exciting. Back in April, you had your AEW debut, came to the aid of Adam Cole on Dynamite versus the JAS. This was great because I'm literally standing in go position, and I heard Angelo Parker say, "Where's Roddy?" And I turn around, and there you are. I'm like, oh, this was inevitable. This is cool.
Right.
So can you talk about your debut a little bit and how it all came together?
Like, where would you like me to start from? I mean, obviously, I don't know, it's kind of a long story, but a short story.
Well, then just start at let's start at the top then. Like, how did you end up at AEW? The inevitable, like, Roddy just showed up.
Yeah. Well, in August of last year, I got injured, and I was out for some time. And when it was getting closer to the end of the year, my contract actually expired from WWE. So it was just one of those situations where, one, I was rehabbing. I was in a pretty decent place, but not exactly sure what was going to go on with me at the time. And I had someone representing me, and just kind of reached out and was talking to both companies. And it was one of those weird things that it just felt like it was inevitable, and just kind of walking through a certain part of the process just to do it, when I really wanted to be with my buddies and with my wife. And just AEW, it just reminds me so much of what I loved about Ring of Honor, is the collective. Everybody wants it to be better, and you hear whatever, but since I've been there, I really get that feeling of like, how can we make this better? And it's coming from everybody for the most part. And it's very motivating. And I think in those kind of environments, personally, just based off my experience, I thrive better there. I consider it a lot more like college, like, you're not going to, it's not as strict as like high school. You got to come, everything like that. But, if you're doing the things you need to do, you'll become successful, and you'll help the company. And that's the whole point, right? We're there to make the company better and do what is asked of us. So, yeah. So finally making that decision, and just having the opportunity to like, oh, okay, when I get there, I'm going to be doing something with Adam, which obviously excited me very much. And a crazy thing, it was 2 days after my son's birthday, and just the timing of everything was like perfect, and it was super emotional. I really didn't even actually I wasn't able to digest it all until like a few days after. I was like, oh my God. Like, sometimes it still doesn't even feel real. Like, it's just like, yeah. But yeah, it's kind of a little long, drawn out journey, but we got to it, and being able to debut in that position, with Adam, and I don't know. It was the best. It was awesome. Couldn't have asked for anything better.
Well, to pull back a little bit of a curtain, because this was a really tightly kept secret, to the point of where before I started with AEW, I was working in wrestling media. I was doing a lot of reports. I could not get anyone in WWE, anything, to give me any information on what was going on with Roderick Strong. Nobody seemed to know.
Oh.
And so it took me by surprise. It was a week before I started with the company, and it took me completely by surprise when you showed up, when you got the Killswitch Engage music. Like, everything that hit at that moment was a genuinely great surprise. You could hear it in that audience. You could hear it in that crowd. How was it keeping that a secret this long?
It was very difficult. Very, very difficult. But it also was something that I feel bad because I misled some people, but I didn't try to. I didn't outright lie, but it was one of those things that you do realize, especially nowadays, like, there are no real secrets anymore in wrestling. And to actually be able to be one was huge. It's like something that people will remember forever. And, just exactly that, like having Killswitch Engage, that song means so much to me. So it gets me it just, it was just too perfect. But yeah, it was definitely difficult, even some of my family I wasn't being honest with, just because I know they're just so eager to, I can't wait till this. You never know who's going to say anything. So, yeah, it was cool. It was something I'll never forget. And just that feeling, I was so nervous. And that's why I felt like this is right. I haven't been this nervous in so long. Yeah, it was just too perfect.
I love it. Yeah, you can't let grandma spoil things on Facebook for people. You got to be real careful about that.
You never know. My mom gets excited. She'll tell people, it's like, I didn't mean that. I'm like, yeah, I know you didn't mean to do it.
No, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, you know what that, don't tell anyone means tell everybody.
Tell everybody.
Yeah.
Tell
just
20
so
people.
Excited for you to go do what you love.
Oh my God. I was really excited that I got the opportunity to work with you in Austin at the Falls Count Anywhere match, which, by the way, I still have scars on my arm from counting in the plants, Texas, and their violent greenery. So
and their violent garbage cans.
They're violent garbage cans.
Garbage cans that hit me in the face and ripped my earlobe off a little bit.
Yes. So for people that don't know this, all the crazy things that happen in the match, there's an ice cream spot, there's counting in the stairs, there's that little tiny span in between, where I thought you guys were going to step off of it and die. There's all of these things happening, and it's the trash can that ends up making you bleed. Oh
man, it was crazy. I just was I was so disappointed in myself in that moment, and I was like, whoa, gosh. But I was like, and I thought, oh, it's plastic. It's not going to be that hard. But the bottom obviously is a whole different beast.
Yeah, dude. Trash cans.
And it messed up my beard.
Really?
It took me so long to get facial hair. My whole career, everyone's like, you. And I was finally so proud of it. And then I'm like, oh, it's got a little slash in it. So maybe it makes me look tough, but. Maybe.
I mean, chicks dig scars. It all works. As long as Marina likes it, we're all good. That's all that matters.
Yeah, she doesn't mind
so let's talk about that match a little bit. What was that like for you, coming in and working with Jericho in this crazy match format? There's ice cream being thrown everywhere. What was that like?
Well, one, just working with Chris. He's someone obviously that I grew up watching, and he was in that cruiserweight division that I idolized so much, that inspired me to, because I started wrestling super young, at 12, 11, almost 12 was the first time I stepped in a ring. My first match in front of people, I was 13.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's why the Owen Hart tournament meant so much to me, because Jim Neidhart was my original trainer. So just to have that tie, it was just kind of crazy. At first I'm like, oh crap. But, and I've ran into Chris a couple times prior, and there's obviously mutual respect, but it still was surreal. And it was one of those matches where, here we go, pulling back the curtain a little bit, but like they're like, because there's trust, even though we don't know each other, like the expectation based off of like our experiences in life, and in our careers, it's like, okay, well, I trust this guy, and we just kind of go off a feel. It was awesome. Like, and just to be a part of something that people now like, it's so memorable. It's from all those like crazy brawls we used to watch back in the day. It's like I got to actually be a part of something like that, and it felt very special while we were doing it, and then afterwards to see the response was, it was awesome. It was everything and more. And Chris is the man. He, they say don't meet your heroes, the people you look up to, but he's awesome. He's just really, really cool guy, and like obviously understands wrestling now, and but has all that knowledge from before. So just the crew, all of us, even working with you, just the trust was just there, and we just were really starting to get to know each other. So it was perfect for me. Like I just felt so comfortable, and it was my first time really getting like in a longer match in so long. So yeah, something I'll remember forever. My son freaking loved it. So
No, that was great. Like honestly, just being in the building at that point, and even just trying to keep up with where you guys were all headed and all of that, and then seeing Aubrey afterward in your arm, and everything
I was covered
about
in ice cream.
yeah.
No, it was excellent, honestly. I think that was a great way to introduce yourself in its singles mode to the AEW audience, because, a lot of us have been longtime fans, and then there is a good portion of the fans that are still being introduced to people when they come in. And so I thought
Oh
that
yeah.
was honestly just an excellent way to bring you to those fans.
Yeah, and it highlighted like one part of me that I wrestle very violently, and in that environment, that's kind of like what's asked of it. So yeah, it couldn't have been better.
Well, on the topic of the longtime fans, the people who have been following you a long time, I will say my introduction to indie wrestling was 2005 Ring of Honor. That was the period that I got into it, and that was the period that introduced me to this whole other world of professional wrestling. And of course, you were a gigantic part of that. And of course, just recently on Collision, you were a part of the aforementioned Owen Hart tournament. You faced Samoa Joe. You were defeated by Samoa Joe, but this was a renewal of a rivalry that a lot of people were very familiar with. We got to see a collection of footage of matches you had with Joe. What was it like getting back in the ring with Joe?
Man, it's kind of, I'm at this point right now where everything's kind of surreal, and it takes me a little bit to like digest what's going on, just because from my time away and the uncertainty of one, if I was going to continue to do it or not. And then, you know, then getting back into it and still trying to, find my footing. Like I've wrestled like 5 matches in the last year pretty much, so it's, and it's against someone like Joe who, I just know what I'm going to get. Like I was telling Marina like a couple days before, I'm just like geeked up and like, I can't wait to go through this, because this is the kind of stuff that I really love. Like I'm going to give it my all. It's going to be a war of attrition, and and I just, yeah. And just to see where we're at, Joe was one of the people when I came to Ring of Honor that was very helpful to me. So I owe him a lot. He was always watching my matches, giving me feedback, blah, blah, blah. I was so lucky just during that time. Like, it's crazy just to think about all the guys that were so nice and always gave me, like, that's what I loved about Ring of Honor. Like, you had your guys, and then those guys found the people that they thought could, when their time is up. And they were always just so helpful. It's just a matter of being, I knew that I didn't know anything. So I really just loved to have the opportunity to hear those guys give me feedback, and then just kind of try every time out there to do the best I could with what they told me. So it was one to show Joe, like, even though we had some tag matches when we were with WWE, like in NXT and stuff, but just to go in there and it's just a whole different animal. So it was nice to test myself against him, and obviously, unfortunately, I lost, but just reminding myself like who I am and that I can still do it the way I want to do it.
It is crazy to think you guys did have the tag matches in between in WWE, but as far as the singles match is concerned, you guys went 17 years without having a one-on-one match going between.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was Glory by
Whoa.
Honor 5 in 2006, all the way up until that episode of Collision.
And the circumstances in that situation were crazy too, because the armory like shut down and then they put a tent and then it was raining like crazy and the tent was like the water we thought was going to bust, come through. It was just, that situation was just crazy. So to do it in this setting was a little bit, it was substantially better. I'll tell you that.
You're not under a tent in the pouring rain. You're now in an
like,
arena.
oh my God, is he going to senton me? And then it's going to implode. And then here we go. Just be covered in freaking water.
This is wild. This is an awesome conversation we're having with Roderick Strong here on AEW Unrestricted. More coming up after this. AEW Unrestricted, Aubrey and Will. Hi, Will.
Hi.
We are here with Roderick Strong. This has just been an awesome conversation. Yeah. I love how wonderful and positive and just like grateful you are so far, of like, because you've had this storied career. You're giving credit where it's due, respect where it's due, and it's wonderful. And we were talking before the break a little bit about the Owen Hart tournament and facing Samoa Joe, but the Owen Hart tournament means more than just, facing this former rival. You have a connection with the Hart family. Can you talk about your being trained by Jim Neidhart?
Yeah, I mean and just the whole situation going into it was crazy as well. So, I mean, there's some video out there just kind of about my backstory, but during that time, because I had a rough upbringing and stuff, and during that time, my mom had shot my dad, and I mean, it's a whole big thing, but she was in jail, and it was just my dad was a single parent at the time, and his friends called him. He was my age right now when his friends called him. They're like, hey, you want to be a wrestler? And my dad's like, oh, sure. He's, athletic guy. So, but it was just really funny, because you don't think, like, I'd watch wrestling for a stretch, but then I had stopped watching it completely. So we're like, oh, it's this WWF star, and you just don't know who it's really going to be. It could have been, everybody called themselves a WWF star if they did a job or whatever. It didn't really matter. But to show up there and it be someone that I had like literally watched and I was such a big fan of, like Bret Hart and him, it was just crazy. And just he was as wild as you would have expected it. And just to go there and like sit, I would watch for like the first month. I just got to go there. It was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Oh my God. And then one day they were like, he's like, oh, you can get up in there. And like, oh, I was like hooked after that. Like I remember like the ride home, my dad's like, oh, Jim said like if you stuck to this, you'd be good. I mean, all they did was fucking stand on the top rope. Oh, sorry for cursing, but I just stood on the top rope and messed around a little bit. But man, that was like the first time in my life I'd gotten a compliment like about just that I could be good at anything really, besides my parents. And just wrestling then was my own little thing. It wasn't like, in my real life, how dysfunctional it was. There, it could just be whatever I wanted. And you realize, like, I don't know, I just learned, work, like, Jim would work them so hard. And it would just explain, like, this is the stuff you need to do to get here. And, like, if you don't do that, you won't get here. And that, like, really stuck with me, like, throughout the years. Like, cause I ended up, my dad ended up having a ring belt. So we always kind of had one of those, like from when I was like 12 on. So I go spend just so much time in there. And, if it wasn't for that experience, I know I wouldn't be wrestling. If it wasn't for Jim saying those words, even if he didn't truly mean it, I wouldn't be here. So yeah. And just, Owen was someone that I really looked up to as well. Obviously, I was infatuated with that whole family and just what they meant to wrestling and what wrestling meant to them. So, yeah, it's an awesome thing that I, have had this opportunity. And that what through my time off was where I really like found gratitude or, I just really, I was like, if I don't ever do this again, that would suck, but I've done a lot of stuff. And then when I realized, like, the minute I knew I could go on, I was like, this has to be the best part of my career. This has to, this is my time to put everything that I've learned over all that time together. No excuses, no nothing, but also be grateful along the way. So, yeah, it's wild.
Well, speaking on the topic of that time off, how important was that downtime for you between WWE and AEW and the time for your injury?
Well, the most important one, I've never been off for more than like 6 weeks ever. Like there was like 2.5 months between my indies and going to WWE. But besides that, like, I always tried to come back as quickly as I possibly could when I got hurt. I always wanted to be around. I was always afraid of people forgetting about me. And, at this point, when that happened, I just had no choice. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, one, becoming okay with that. And then realizing that, that they won't forget about me. And if some people do, and, there's a lot going on, it's not the end of the world. But when I come back, I'll remind them. And then I also got to spend so much time with my son. And,
Man, I love this because you're clearly, like, you talk about being grateful, but then just like watching you and just seeing the gratitude you have for, everything that wrestling has given you. I actually heard from a little bird that you got super into Rick Rubin during your time off.
I did so much.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my emotions in check real quick.
Hey, I'm over here watching you about to cry myself. I know that feeling of just getting that time with the time you didn't think you were going to get, but getting that time with your kid is phenomenal.
And like when the pandemic and everything started, like, I don't know, that's when like real life with him really started. And dealing with the emotions of not traveling anymore, not wrestling as often, like all the things. Yeah, it wasn't good at some points, so to like, I
love you, Roddy.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. Yeah, didn't expect to get this upset, but no, just to work on that, like, relationship while trying to get like healthy. It was hard, but it was awesome. Like
all right, real thing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, since we're on the topic, I want to talk about your son, actually, because I saw a video once of an absolute banger that you two had at his birthday party where you guys had a match in a bouncy house. There was at least like one Canadian destroyer, and he's like 5.
Yeah, it was his 5th birthday. Oh yeah, that was crazy.
Talk about that a little bit, because I heard like the kids at school the next day were just like, "Oh my god, this was so awesome!" And he's like the most popular kid in school now.
Oh yeah. Well, first off, the people out of school are awesome. Like, I love the fact because they always call your name when your parents come, and the people that own the school, the wife was his teacher. And their daughter would come, and she really liked to come, like, help in that class. She'd love Troy, but she would always like announce him like he's being introduced for wrestling when they call him like to the thing, and he loved it. So grateful for that. But oh man, he said he wanted to have this match, and it was one of those things that were like, okay, we're going to do it, and it, you just think it's going to be like a little thing, and as time got closer, just realized how many people from his school was coming. It ended up being like 65 or 70 people came. And then crazy thing is I got food poisoning. So like that morning I'm just Ralphing like all freaking day. And then it's like time. And I remember telling Marina, I'm like, I got to do this. I can't not do it. I've wrestled in worse conditions than this. Like, I've got to do it. And just to experience him in that setting was wild. You don't, now I get what people were saying about me all the time when I would wrestle them, because I get it like, I get like so into it. Like when you wrestle me, it's definitely an experience. Like, because I just get lost in it. It's as real as it can be to me. Like, and just seeing him do his entrance and everything, and how much he like hammed it up, and then just walking out there, I'm like, oh, I feel like crap, but I feel so excited right now. I don't. And getting in there, I just remember there was this. He had me in like this stretch, and I was standing. I spun him. I gave him this big backbreaker, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a second to breathe. And I look up, and his eyes are so big, and he's just like, ah, and he just ran and kneed me in the face. And I was like, I was actually scared. I was actually scared for like a half a second, because I really expected him to be down. But he just had this look of like, I'm going to kill you now. And it was like, I was like, I can't believe a 5-year-old scared me like that. But it was just such an awesome experience to see him be that comfortable in front of people. And then when it was done, I was like, oh, I felt so much better when it was done, though, because that's usually how it goes. Like, if you feel like crap, then you go and you go wrestle and you get it out, and you're just like, oh my God, this is, whew, so much better. But yes, very much so. And now back to the Rick Rubin stuff. Like, just realize, like, one, people tend to make life too complicated, like just overall for themselves. And I found myself like really struggling with that. And then it's like, okay, well, after my experiences in NXT and stuff, and like just I'm like, how do I come back to this and approach it differently? Because I understand that I've been away from it. I've watched it obviously, but when you're not calling a match every week, you're not, involved with stuff. It like, you just don't realize like how used to it you get. And then my fear is coming back and just trying to get into the same like habits that I had before. But obviously times have changed, companies changed, like I have changed as a person. And like, the stuff that really attached me to him was, one, learning how, like, just listening to him talk about what a true collaboration is and what it involves. And that's what wrestling is. It's like two people, like, and there's just, you hear, so much nowadays. It's, people are very selfish, and this is a business that you have to be to a point, but then you also have to be selfless. So I always call it like, selfishly selfless. That's like wrestling demands both sides from you. And I'm like, well, how do I approach this and not just try not to get my emotions? So, because I just hate people being difficult. I don't quite understand it, but I also was very difficult at certain parts of my career. So like, I don't, and so it just approaching it with a more simplified mindset. And that's usually when it's the easiest to get the real emotion out of myself and like my opponents. That's like working with someone like Joe. It's not going to be overly complicated. We're going to make the story very clear, and someone like Chris, same thing. Like, it's not, whoa, but me, blah, blah, blah. It's just, and there's nothing against people that work like that. That's what they do. But for me, and it's something that reminded me of like when I started in Ring of Honor, the main event guys were the main event guys, and they worked a certain way. And I always looked at it like, when I'm good enough to get, when I understand and can work like that, I will be in that, in that realm of the main event. So just kind of, really, and a lot of introspective stuff. Like, he just speaks about so much introspective stuff. And like, it's hard sometimes to say to you, really believe like, oh, you are rather creative or whatever. Just, and then just like allowing myself to like be okay with saying I understand something or I'm good at something, and and it not being in like a look how fucking good I am at this. Sorry again. Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, it just really it just helped prepare me for this part of my career, which is obviously going to be the most vulnerable I've ever been, and the most I don't know, the situations are going to only get bigger and they're going to be more important, and, you know, not being scared by them. So long-winded answer on that, but yeah.
No, I
No,
love it.
perfect.
Hey,
Love it.
we started this interview referring to you as Mr. Ring of Honor, of course. And a big piece of that is your tenure in Ring of Honor. You were with Ring of Honor 13 years. And a big piece of that, again, I talk about my exposure to indie wrestling, and a lot of it was that era of Ring of Honor. Like I said, I got into it around 2005. But you were there from 2003. You immediately formed the Generation Next stable: Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Alex Shelley. So kind of talking about the genesis of your run in Ring of Honor. How was that in getting started, and how did that play? What kind of role did that play essentially in establishing who you'd become in Ring of Honor?
Well, one wild thing about it is in 2003, my old tag partner, Cedric Strong, he had did the Super 8, and I was so heartbroken that I didn't do it. And it was one of those, because I'd been around it since I was so young, and it was at the time just me jealous. He totally deserved to get it, and at the end of the day, I was happy for him. But I was like, yeah, maybe I'm just not like made to do this. And I told Eric Stevens, who I was training him at the time, he had not yet wrestled. I just said, he's the one that really introduced me to all of indie wrestling. I didn't realize there was as big of a world as there was. And I just said, man, if I don't make it to Ring of Honor by the end of 2003, I'm just going to quit. I'm just going
Damn.
to, just focus on college. And it just seems like an easier route to go, to do that instead of like keep trying with this wrestling stuff. And pretty wild, like literally maybe 30 minutes later, like Dan Moff had gotten a hold of me. He was someone that had got me connected with Gabe and stuff. And it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gotten to Ring of Honor. So, or it just would have taken me a lot longer. And then I just, that day it was like, hey, can you make it? Can you make it to Philly on this date? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. And then it was just such a surreal experience there. I'm just I grew up in like it was just wild. But then, staying in touch, doing some stuff, and then Gabe having the idea with Generation Next, us going in there, like him having the confidence that we could do what he asked of us, and we could step right in and go with the main event guys, and we could, we don't have to be as polished as them, but the fact that the like potential was there with all of us, like, was just such a big motivating factor. And then getting in there with all those guys, uh, that was so pivotal for my career. That expedited my learning process so much, like literally so much. It was like, may have taken me another 5 years to get all the knowledge that I got. Cause I got we got to do stuff with Steamboat. So I got to listen to him, Mick Foley, like, and then working against Punk and Brian a bunch, and Joe and Jamie Noble, and now the list goes on and on. Like, it was crazy. And I think that was part of, because of the opportunity given to me, it was hard for me to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those situations where I stayed longer than I should have, but like, I felt bad. I'm a loyal guy. I don't know, it was hard, but I definitely
I
stayed like a few years too many, but nothing I can do about it now.
Right. I think it's interesting because when we had Jay Lethal on the podcast, he basically said the same thing about, his career. Like, he's a very loyal guy. He was at Ring of Honor for as long as he could be. And you just see these names kind of associated, and hearing what you're talking about and how Ring of Honor is that kind of place where the guys up top are building the guys that are below, and everyone's kind of sharing this knowledge and information and helping everybody get better. Like, it totally makes sense why you wouldn't necessarily want to leave and why you might stay longer than you should. air quotes. Like, it just seems like it's such a great thing for you, not only as a wrestler, but as a person and who it is you are becoming as a grown
Yeah.
man. So
Well,
there's
and I
nothing
got
wrong
to
with staying.
yeah. Well, and I got to fail there pretty hard, which was hard for me to deal with, but it was something that needed to happen, and I was glad it happened there instead of anywhere else. Like
Right.
if the platform would have gotten bigger and that would have happened, it would have crushed me, and I probably would have like quit or something. But going into the once everyone started leaving and kind of like it's like okay, now this is the guy, and it was like, but I believed I was the guy, and I wasn't the guy. I just wasn't ready. I did.
Right.
I avoided the one thing that would have helped me be there, and that's just I didn't talk very much, and I didn't know what I would talk about, and I didn't know how to talk about myself in a way that wasn't like corny and like it's still hard for me to talk about myself like in like oh look how good it's really really difficult for me, but like having kind words said to me about Jamie Punk, like, and then it's like all right, here it is, and then it was just no good. I took it, it was wild. But that was like my biggest learning experience of like, now you got to get prepared. And then obviously over time I tried, but I was trying to play catch up. So it took me a little bit longer in those areas that I avoided because, to me, when I started wrestling, it's like, oh, you get respect with skill. So I'm going to become as skillful as I possibly can, even though, I'm not trained by it. That part of my life with Jim was like 4 months. So then after that, I'm just like kid from a trailer park, friggin' learn. You know what I'm saying? It's just I didn't have the traditional route, so it was really hard. Sometimes a lot of doubt, would sink in and be like, well, these people went to this school and they got to do this and they got to do that. Are you really worthy of this? And it was just, yeah, was that imposter syndrome or whatever?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's real.
Now, obviously, I didn't know that back then what that was called, but yeah, I was dealing with a lot of that. So Ring of Honor was great for giving me the opportunity to fail and not giving up on me. So it's
Hell
great.
yeah. I
Yeah.
I love it. I love this whole conversation. This is fantastic. We're talking to Roderick Strong on AEW Unrestricted. Coming up, we've just got more. Let's talk more. Yeah.
Unrestricted.
AEW Unrestricted. We're back. I'm Will Washington with Aubrey Edwards. We're talking with Roderick Strong about just his storied career thus far, and we've been talking about Ring of Honor. And there's a man that I think you had a rivalry with that really put you on the map. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot. How do I put this? I can't think of somebody I've seen you face more across multiple promotions than one Brian Danielson. You guys had a famous trilogy of matches in Ring of Honor, but you guys have faced each other really across the indies. But talk to me a little bit about working with Brian Danielson and that time of your career.
Oh, where do I start? One, it was just super nerve wracking. I would say that when I originally was told just our first matchup, I was so nervous because, you know, he was one of the guys, and you just like start looking up to these people, your peers, because he's not that much older than me, but at the time, like his experience was just so different because he went to Shawn Michaels school. Which a funny thing is, I actually tried to go to Shawn's school, but I was too young. I was 16 at the time, so my parents wouldn't let me, and they probably wouldn't have taken me anyways. But I just knew it was my opportunity to like, it's like sink or swim with him, and I don't know. Those are definitely like the most important matches of my career in the sense of learning and wrestling someone, like I don't know, we just brought out something in each other that, I probably wouldn't have found if I wouldn't have been working with him. So it was, to me, the most important set of matchups I've ever had.
Damn.
Yeah, talking about, famously, you guys went almost 60 minutes. You guys had the 1 hour time limit match for the title and went it went 56 minutes. One, how do you prepare, especially at that stage of your career, for a 60-minute match?
Well, good thing I was busy wrestling. That's how you prepare. Just keep doing it as much as you possibly can. And a little crazy thing about that, I'd actually torn my calf muscle like a week. There was like a little tear in it, like a week before that match. And I was so scared that I was just going to drop the ball. I was like, oh my God, I am not prepared for this. But, he's a freaking pro. And, as time went on, my confidence rose in the match. I wasn't as scared. But yeah, just hearing that number, 60 minutes, like even though like it was like we had went 37 minutes, 47 minutes, but just as it incrementally gets higher, you're like, oh my God, I do not know how I'm going to do in here. And it was awesome though.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't think I have the cardio for something like that.
Yeah. Well, I ended up having a 60-minute match with Jay Lethal in Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's true.
That was one of my favorite matches I've ever had too, just because it was a war and it was so hot in there. It was like it was just so hot, but so much fun. Like he's one of my favorite opponents that I've ever had, like Jay. But back to Brian, it just his mindset's different. He approaches these things different, and I think he helped just by proxy. Like it changed the way I kind of looked at it a little bit deeper than just what it is. And then, that further went on until obviously it tied into like when I went to WWE with Shawn Michaels, when he was our coach, like that was when it really solidified. It's okay to like look at this differently than the other people are looking at it. Not saying I look at it the best, but it's just, I just look at it a lot deeper. Everything is a lot deeper than it is to me. I don't know. That's just because wrestling is such an emotional thing. Like it really truly is. It's a sequence of events and all that stuff, but it really is just so emotional.
Speaking of emotional, we had touched on this a little bit earlier in a fan question from the AB Promotions. What was it like debuting with your Ring of Honor theme song at AEW? Like, what did that moment mean for you?
Well, it's funny because that wasn't my Ring of Honor theme song, but what End of Heartache though was my theme song in PWG, where
that's what it was. Yes,
I was champion, and that run was the most important run of my whole entire career. Like
Ooh.
It really, really was, because Super Dragon had given me the opportunity to like do whatever I wanted. So like when we brought up the idea of how I like becoming champion and all that, and like I told him like I'm just like I felt like I need to be a bad guy in this. Like I've been here for so long, like I just prefer to be a bad guy anyways, because
it's more fun.
Yeah, and my style, it's hard because not a lot of people work the same style as me, and I'm rough and I'm violent, and that is me getting out a lot of my demons, so I don't mind then taking an ass whooping back. And that's it's just different, because I don't ever want to come like whatever, just kind of touching on this. I did it like Family Guy, like when they played videos of me in WWE, like coming, showing my background and like showing my life in the current like position it was in, and being like fighting for my family guy, which I'm not. Like I am, but I'm not. Like I personally, from a character standpoint, would like to do it. I'm doing this shit for me, and they get the residual effects of it. Like if I don't do this for me, our life's not going to be good. So I'm a very selfish person in that sense. And that's a real thing. Like if whatever will be next after physically doing wrestling, I will have to do something that fulfills me for my life to be optimal. So, and sorry, but, and then using that song there, I had such an attachment to it, and that being such a pivotal part. That's why it was so important for when I came to AEW. I'm like, you're going to get the purest me with that. Like I attach that song, and right now I'm obviously in the direction that I need to be, but when the time comes when I get to turn that and, be who I want to be wrestling wise, it'll be the best me yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one
Yeah.
of
I'm
those
so
things. So it
excited.
has such a, yeah, it's just, it feels good. That to me was probably the most important aspect of me signing. It just, yeah,
No,
yeah, for
honestly, I
me.
love that because I feel like AEW has almost created a a sense of full circle for a lot of people's careers when it comes to theme music because
Yeah.
of the fact that we've been licensing so much music that I was thinking the other day about how it's got to be every independent wrestler's goal at this point to reach a point in your career where you can come back to the music that made you famous on the indies, and Tony Khan's going to make that possible for you. I actually
No,
think that's a really cool thing.
no, it's amazing. It's amazing. And, there was a little point in, my time with WWE that it almost happened. I almost got it there, but some stuff happened and it fell through. And it was just, it showed me like, oh, the timing wasn't right. And then when it happened with this, it just, I don't know, when things start falling into place, you're like, oh, this is definitely right. This is definitely, yep, I'm moving in the right direction. And that was just one of the things, because it then guarantees me an opportunity to bring the best me to AEW. And that's all I want to do, is bring the best me, and anything that I can do to help the company grow and just, be an influence in any way possible.
Yeah, I wanted to read this question. This is from Beast Wrestler 21. And it's an important question, I think, because of the fact that you've been around for so long and been around the scene for so long and wrestled in so many different places that the list can't be terribly long. But who are some wrestlers from AEW and ROH that you have never wrestled before that you'd like to compete against?
Mm. Um, I mean, Pentagon, Ray Phoenix,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
um, uh,
gotta inject that into my veins. Oh my God.
there's some young, like, I like Action Andretti, right?
Hmm.
Like, he's someone that, in Darius. I mean, there's, man, I'm trying to think of there. If you named off of it, there's just so many, really. Like, I'm trying to think if I can, ones that just come like to the top of my head. See, for me, it's weird because I guess sometimes I focus so much on revisiting like some of the things that I've done, but it's so different now. I'm so different, like you bring up Brian. Like, me and Brian wrestling now is going to be substantially different than it was before. Like,
Hmm.
uh, me and Punk, me and Joe, it was different. Like, um, getting
Well,
to work, with the Bucks, work
yeah,
with
yeah.
Kenny.
Yep.
Uh, the list
That's
goes
true.
kind.
Last time you wrestled Kenny was what, 2010? So like we're
Yeah.
talking about a substantially different Kenny Omega than
No,
you
exactly.
see today. Yeah.
But
But hey, what about the top? MJF.
yeah,
Yeah.
MJF. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. I'd like to see what he's all about. He likes to say what he's all about, so we'll see, right?
Right.
It's a whole
Right.
different ball game when you get in there. But Big Bill,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
is someone I've never worked with, and honestly, dude, just watching him, such a big fan. And
Dude.
his story too is crazy. So it's just like to see him overcome that kind of stuff. Obviously, my mom's a recovering addict, and she's in that world like a lot. And just to see people overcome their demons and do that, and someone like that, like, I feel he looks better than he ever has. Like, well,
He does.
physically, that's obviously, but even his work, like,
Oh, yeah.
Wardlow is someone I'd like to work with.
Let's just scroll down the whole roster and just name everybody
Everybody.
Yeah.
because I feel like,
That was like, as it became like more like, I knew I was gonna. I'm like, there's literally so many people that I could wrestle, and that's
yes,
exciting to me because sometimes in other situations, like, yeah, maybe there's like a dozen people, but like in this case, it's like
everybody.
70, and I'd be willing to wrestle them all. It doesn't matter. So it's just, yeah, that part is so cool.
Man. Yeah, it's just like the storied career you'd have. It's the what's old is new again. That everyone is, it's open season, just wrestle anybody. And I'm so excited to see all of these potential matchups happening like in our own ring. Like it's just so dope.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you're here. This is great.
Yeah, me too. I really, really enjoyed it. It's been that just rekindling relationships has probably been my favorite part of being there. Like even more so than the wrestling. Like it's just wild. Like you start talking, you're like, oh man, I can't believe you actually like me. That's cool. Like you're awesome. Like, and then we're, and just catching up and seeing where everyone's at in their life now. It's just, it's like, holy crap, we never thought. Yeah, that's definitely been my favorite part of it all.
It's been so wild, and I'm so appreciative that you were able to make it on this podcast and talk with us today.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So great.
I was pumped.
Yeah, dude, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Like, I can't thank you enough. My cup's full. I'm ready for the day. This is dope. Like,
Right.
Awesome. You can follow Roddy on Instagram and Twitter at Roderick Strong. Of course, you can listen to this podcast. New episodes every Thursday. Video comes out early in the next week. So definitely listen. Listen to me. Listen to Will Washington. All of our fun, awesome guests we have. We have so much going on. Dynamite, TBS on Wednesdays. Rampage, TNT Fridays. Collision, live every Saturday on TNT. I am Aubrey Edwards, along with my guest co-host, Will Washington. Thank you so much for listening to AEW Unrestricted. Bye.
Bye-bye.